Hey there, JJ here from Better Than Data, and I'm just super excited to share with you an unedited raw video that is normally inside of the Better Than Data community. So if you did not know, every single Monday, Stockton and I, and sometimes it's other people as well, just run through what's on our minds as far as when it comes to measurement, data, marketing, and everything in between. It's almost like an internal podcast that we talk through what's happening in our agency, what's happening on the ground, what we're hearing in the chatter, updates, etc. And this week, we were talking through attribution and what that looks like when it comes to when you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with bosses, and when you're dealing with platforms, and how you look at attribution. There is no silver bullet, which you'll see us talk through, and this is a raw, unedited clip that is normally inside of Better Than Data's inside calls, but this one was so juicy, we wanted to put it on the internet so you could see as well. If you're interested in joining Better Than Data, there's a link down below, betterthandata.com/join. I will see you guys around. I'm so excited to share this. Guys, happy Monday. We are out here hopping into things. Last week was a holiday. Stockton is out of the grave from being sick. I'm over here holding down the fort, and let's hop into things. So, Stockton, any words coming back from the grave that you want to let people know about?
This is life is much better than halfway, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But maybe, my voice, does my voice sound sweet? Nice, manly, deep voice.
Yes.
I'm like 90% out of it, so we're good to go.
And yeah, so basically just like a quick update on the course that Stockton was working on is basically his voice is shot this week, and we're going to like block off time for him next week to record the remaining aspects of the, whatever we want to call it, the Facebook ads for analytics agencies bonus superpower promo situation.
There's so much hype around this, you guys. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. And sorry to keep dangling the carrot in front of you, but you guys, people are people and life is life. So here we are. Okay. In other news, what we're going to do on this call is we're going to talk about attribution. So there's been conversations from like multiple people. We've got clients that are like in the thick of this attribution question right now. We've got members that are asking about attribution. So we're going to talk through some thoughts on attribution. I'm going to do like a couple high level things, and then Stockton, you can like give your thoughts, and then we'll go back and forth.
Let's do it.
Okay. So attribution at its core is basically answering you're trying to answer the question of like what caused this thing, more or less. But you can frame that in a lot of different ways. So like you could say like, where did they come from? What was the first way they found us? And how do you want to attribute, meaning like, how do you want to like allocate whatever the outcome is back to the original piece? And I've heard at conferences, like some nerdy conference that I went to is Content Marketing World, I think, where this dude who's like a data scientist was like, the best attribution model is like reverse breakdown model, where you basically take the amount of impact for every single thing and then take the value of what happened and like attribute a little bit of value to every single one. The problem with that is you don't know what to do with that information, because now you have like all of these little things and you're like, do I spend that amount of money on each plot? Like, it's not correlated. Like it might be correlated, but it's not like causated on that. And so that's like one way of thinking about attribution. There's also the thought of like attribution in the sense of like the different types of attribution. So the last, like on the different types of attribution, there's like last click attribution, and then there's like kind of known click interactions. So for example, last click is like, where did this session start, for like lack of better, like that's what it means. Like, where did the session start and how did they start the session? But then there's also like, if Facebook says I started that session, but then the session ended and they got an email, then technically it wasn't Facebook. And you could even go, for example, like here's a great example of this is, imagine you go to a website and it says like you sign up for the newsletter, and the newsletter says, please confirm in your first email that you are on our list. So you go to your email, you click on that, it says like email ConvertKit, whatever else. And then there's a thank you page, like thanks for confirming. Also, we wanted to give you a special gift as an offer of $20. Well, now your last click is going to say email, but like Facebook caused the lead. So like even that little scenario, it's like which attribution, like we might change in our minds how we want to view that. But like that's an example of how convoluted things are in such a very easily convoluted thing. That's a so simple explanation of like someone confirming their email address and then having to then buy something, where is that Facebook will say that it caused that, and Klaviyo will also say that it caused that, or whatever else. So that's where we're going to start things. And Stockton, I would love to hear your thoughts on attribution.
Well, like anyone who solves this, let me know, because we could do an IPO, like we could get funding, like $1 billion in funding, no problem. Like this is that big of a problem to solve that people are trying to solve. People are trying to unravel, right? So yeah, the concept is like if something happens, the attribution is assigning credit to somewhere or a group of somewheres, right? So like depending on the model, because it's all just how you want to look at it, is who should get the credit. But there's tons of inherent flaws with like assigning credit, because typically when we're talking about digital marketing and the internet world, it's done through devices and browsers, right? A website doesn't necessarily have this concept of an actual person, right? Like Stockton, my social security number, visited the website. Like browsers don't know that. So if I come from a Facebook ad on my phone, but then I have to confirm my email and go to my computer, like browsers don't know that it's the same person. So like there's already so many headwinds when we're talking about attribution. And the thing is, each platform is going to tell this story according to the information that they have. So I kind of made a joke with Mendy in the group. I was like, would you go to Google Ads to tell you how much money is in your bank account, right? Like these platforms don't have the all-seeing eye. They're not looking at, oh, I'm a Google ad, but hey, I see you're also running Facebook and Criteo and email. So like, I'm going to take into consideration those pieces. It doesn't have that view. It doesn't have the view into all the things, your bank account being one of them, right? So when you're looking at platform reporting, it's going to be very different than what may have actually happened. And the biggest sign of that is when, let's say you have 100 orders on the store, Facebook reports 75 and Google Ads also reports 75. And so there you go. Now you have 150 orders, but really there was only 100, right? So that's where you're like, oh, we need attribution, because we need to be able to see like at the end of the day, my result should say 100 because there was actually only 100. So like I need to assign the credit to a source. That's attribution. It's inherently flawed. It's super difficult. And it's not like Google Ads is lying. It's just telling the story from its point of view, from what it saw. I caused a click. I caused a sale. I don't care what happened in between. Like I did the thing. So,
and on that note is like there's kind of two ways to look at this. Is you shorten that window of, like, it's called an attribution window, for how long something should be attributed. So back in the Facebook, back when Stockton and I were in diapers, when Facebook was first launched, I'm just kidding. When Facebook, I guess, ad was first launched, like 2000, what, 10, 11, 12? I don't know. Around there I think it was 90-day attribution. Like that's what it tried to do. So like if somebody saw your ad on Facebook, then bought 90 days later, Facebook would say, I caused that thing. So you would have this like overly inflated Facebook thing, but at the same time, back in that day, it was like probably like it didn't exist before. Like it wasn't like it was a whole new world because it didn't exist. Okay. And so that's like the attribution window is like 90 days. I think by default, most things are like 30 days. 28 days is like kind of a normal thing. But what you can look at is like you've got two different types now. So for example, you have click attribution and view attribution. And so from like, let's just use Facebook, for example, because everybody, like, it's been around for a while now, is like a click attribution is like you click on the ad and then you go and buy the thing, right? So they clicked on it and then they bought it. You can shorten that all the way down to 24 hours. So they click on the ad and they buy it within 24 hours. They could have gotten an email still and like clicked on the ad, put their email address in, and then bought, and then Facebook will still say, I got that, right? But
According
like,
to Facebook.
yeah, according to Facebook.
In their platform.
And so like shortening, like I think one strategy to kind of like rein in attribution is shortening all the attribution windows on these platforms to the smallest possible window that the platform allows. But the problem we run into with this is like the halo effect, what people call, is where you run ads on TikTok and people go and Google you because they saw you and are like, is this person doing anything? And if you're using like a 1-day attribution window and they bought 2 days later, then you're now like out of luck because it's going to say 0 in the platform and then you're getting more sales. And this only, like the only true attribution is drop shipping of like people who spin up a website and then just run ads on like one platform. They're like, we just run ads on TikTok to a Shopify store that only sells one product. Like, that's what they do. There's like no SEO, there's no anything else. That's it. And like, that's the truest sense of attribution that you're going to get. But as businesses become bigger and more complex, that doesn't work.
Yeah, usually like the bigger your company is, the more like direct none you're going to get because people are more aware of your brand. They could just type it in, right? Like, oh, everyone knows Walmart, right? No one's Googling like best shopping center near me. Oh, what's this Walmart? I'm going to go there. Like, no, you just go to walmart.com if that's your thing.
And like the easier something is to remember, like even like Looker Studio VIP, like that's something that like we own. Like the problem with that is that like if you go to the site and you type it in, every time you go to lookerstudio.google.com, it like will autofill Looker Studio VIP.
Yeah.
And so you'll end up with all this direct none traffic. Like we get a ton, like it's like 60% direct none, like to that site because it's like easy to remember. It's very similar, but like it like direct none isn't actionable, right? Like you can't like do anything with that, but you can do landing pages, you can do other levels things. And so in the world of attribution, it's like that window is pretty much like the most important thing to look at. Because for example, if you say for example, you run an ad and you generate a lead for a newsletter. Okay. You generate a lead, and then say 180 days later, somebody buys from like that person buys. Do you attribute that entire sale back to that like lead magnet? Like you should spend more money on that lead magnet. Or do you do something else with like actually there's like an open-ended question. Like there's not like a hard science for how to solve that. But if you know that answer, it becomes a lot more actionable to be like, I can now layer in my marketing strategy of like me being a scientist of triangulating these different things to then answer the question of what do I do next?
Yeah, and there's the classic example too of like, okay, Facebook has really poor performance, but Google Ads is crushing it, right? So should I just turn Facebook off? Like, probably not, because the Facebook is feeding the audience for Google Ads. It's like if you turn Facebook off, your Google Ads are going to die. But that's like, you just have to learn your business to like know that that's what's happening, because there's that halo effect. There's, you know, these things like, here's another like concept to float around is like, should Facebook ads, well, like it's so like it's so scenario specific, but like if you're running like e-commerce, should Facebook ads be responsible for purchases, right? Like you want to get that direct response type sale, like yeah, in that case probably, right? But then maybe sometimes you're just doing so like audience building to build retargeting audiences from Facebook. Like in that case, if your Facebook performance for purchases is really low, like why are you judging it based off of purchases? Like its purpose is now purchases. So you also have to judge the traffic based on the purpose of it.
Exactly. And like it can be it depends on your strategy of what you're doing, to your point. Is like direct response companies that are like buy this thing now for $7.99 like are much more like you should be much more beholden to like what you see.
Oh yeah, Your
from a
dollar should
last
be held
click.
accountable for what you spend it on. Like,
But if you're more brand oriented of like running ads that are literally just branded, like that's where things become more foggy of like, should you be spending money on this? Um, Even for us, like here's something that like I'm playing with, like us running ads to a newsletter and just videos that are strategy. Like imagine if we just put this video on Facebook ads without a call to action, like no call to action, because people aren't like most people that come to us are problem aware because they have a problem. But like, I'm not gonna be able to say like, "Hey, you need this thing now." Like, it's never gonna work. Like, they're never gonna be like, "Oh, I didn't like, oh, what did you know? Like, I didn't even know that world existed, and now it's a problem." Um, and so like for I'm like thinking like even what we could do as like a little experiment is like, what if we ran ads to something and then like broke down the different attributions of like even for us of like we do have products like we could sell a product, we could have like a free lead magnet, we could measure it, but like is it worth it is going to be the answer to the question. But from our standpoint in doing that, it'd be so direct response almost of like like did this cause a lead, yes or no, because we don't have a big budget to burn without a return.
yeah.
So I think that's another factor on this attribution thing from like a small business standpoint is how fast do you have to have a return? Because the bigger you are, the more like you could spend like we've got clients that spend like 1 million a month, um, and don't even care like about half their budget. They're like, nah, like I don't know, like oops, like we're running this ad to a 404 error page. We spent 20 grand this month on that. Like, oops.
Yeah, my bad.
And like they could, yeah. So it's a different thought process. Whereas like if you're a small business, you're like, I've got $10,000 that I have to have $10,000 back in my account at a minimum in
Yeah.
order for this to keep going.
And that's why okay, so all of these different platforms are reporting different things. So you're like, hey, I want to introduce a tool that will solve this for me, right? Like, what tool will untangle this mess and show me a true one-to-one type of thing? Like, hey, there was only 10 sales, so only 10 sources should have an attribution, right? So like Google Analytics is a tool that does that, right? It has its own attribution model. So it's going to be looking at devices, like not the DNA of a person, their social security number, right? It's going to be looking at devices. It's going to be using cookies. It's going to be doing its own modeling. And so like maybe that's the tool you choose. I've never seen like if you were to, anyone prove me wrong on this because no one has been able to. If you were to follow Google Analytics like numbers for your ads, every business would go out of business. Like it never tells the story of performance from ad channels. Okay, so then you're like, okay, well, what about Wicked Reports? What about Hyros? Right? Like, what about all these other tools? Well, each one of them has their own like nuance. So Hyros is going to use fingerprinting. They're going to know what your IP address is, what your user agent is, and like stitch your sessions that way, which is a little better than GA, but like still, has nuances. And side note, before I continue on, one thing I see with like these companies who use attribution tools, they still question them. Like they still don't trust other. I'm like, if you're going to use this tool as your source of truth to sort out and untangle this attribution mess, then like you either believe it or you don't. Like go all in and like scale your ads based on what Hyros is saying, or like don't use it. Like there's no point in adding confusion, complexity. And yeah, like some companies find that they're able to make good decisions based off of Hyros data. Like good for you. Awesome. Like
And I think
keep
like
doing
that,
it then.
and to that point of like with Google Analytics, right? Like, what is the point of this then? Is that you then have the story of like people who did these actions in sequence, which most of those other tools is very difficult to like untangle that out of because it will just be like transactions. And then you have like this user fingerprinting thing of each individual person, but then you're like at a whole, I want to know people who did this, then this, then this, then this, then this. And it's harder to do so. So like Google, that's kind of like, I think what our kind of recommendation is, which like I think we should my thought is like we should run ads and like just put our money
Prove
where our
it.
mouth is and like prove it, is that
Yeah.
like you use Google Analytics for behavioral analytics of
Yep.
like knowing, is this page working? Is this site working? Is this thing doing the thing it's supposed to be doing? If it's not, we need to fix it ASAP. And you can do that by like the fixing it ASAP is like you could do that by CRO, like split testing. You could do that by just changing something over time, which has its own problems, or just like knowing that it sucks and then being like, okay, this sucks, new thing, let's go. That's what like GA is like way better at, like most things at, because it's like event-based, session-based, user, like all these pieces. But then if you're to say like this channel only caused this amount of dollars, you then end up in like a sticky situation. That's why you have to look at Facebook ads to see what the ROAS is in Facebook, and also in Google ads and see what the ROAS is in Google ads, and see if it like kind of triangulates together with the ad platform, behavioral, and reporting that like makes sense in all three of those. And if you don't look at all three, you're going to turn everything off if you're looking at Google Analytics, because nothing is going to be profitable. At the same time, you can't look at all the ad platforms without looking at Google Analytics, because then you're going to scale everything and have no money. And so that's like, I think, our current like thought. Any other thought?
Yeah, like this is where the beauty of the Foresight system comes in, because it handles all scenarios like really well, right? So you have your front end stuff, which is like sources and performance of that source in like the session, right? So if you're running direct response ads from Facebook, someone opts in, someone buys, like whatever thing, you have that direct performance to see the behaviors of what is actually happening from the source. Like that's something Google Analytics is really great. Once they opt in, for example, then the Foresight backend tells you the performance from that point. So like everyone says like, hey, in 10 years, I want to be able to see the performance of my Facebook ads. Like, here's a better like question for you, is you want to know the performance of the source, right? So like front end tells you from channel to result, and then back end tells you from result to lifetime. And that's a better way of framing the attribution question, because it actually like helps you like know what's working and what's not like trying to skip that middle hump.
Exactly. So hopefully this was like helpful. Like I think it's more, I'd say if you have art and science as the two ends of the spectrum, it is definitely not art and not science. Like it's somewhere in the middle, because the scientific like approach ends up with like, I don't know what to do, and the art approach ends up with you doing a bunch of things that you don't know if it worked or not. And like I've seen people on both ends of the spectrum, people that like have a data scientist who are like super nerdy and like but they just like don't understand like what's like how all these things play together.
What a campaign is.
Yeah, they're like trying to like scientifically get them way through this with like their PhD. And then on the other side, you have the art person who's like, I'm gonna craft this like landing page and like it's gonna be all this thing, and like kind of like the more of like internet marketing person who's like going off with a hunch and a dream, and that might work for a while. But then the problem is when you run with the art, you might be like, I got a 17x ROAS on this like thing, and like you can claim that. But when it doesn't work, you end up like holding like whatever you're holding and being like, it didn't work, I don't know what to do. And so you want to make sure that you know when it doesn't work, you know what to do, as opposed to just being like, I didn't work, nothing's working anymore. So
yep,
that, folks, is attribution, the current guide.
the current guide. And if anyone wants to argue, or everyone has their own thoughts, right? If you think your way is better than our way, then keep it to yourself. Just kidding.
Yeah, let us know in the thread below. Like if you're watching it this far, let us know in the thread below, and let's use the like the emoji of a gavel, yeah, as the thing if you make it this far. And like I'm gonna tag people in the threads and be like, hey, I wonder what your thoughts. I know run ads, do SEO, etc. Just to see if they'll chime in, because like again, if you're an ad agency, you look at it one way. If you're a small business owner, you look at it a different way. So all right, guys. Sweet. That has been this week, and we will see you in the chat down below. Let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.